you have interdisciplinary departments that need to communicate and need to have visibility of what each others are actively doing. So it's kind of a disconnected historical system, right? You brought up Excel and how much you loved Excel. And I remember learning applied statistics with a lot of coaching programs, tracking Z scoring, radar plotting, because they wanted to identify trip scores for player A to player B to identify potential risk for overexertion as a training load metric. However, the only person that could see it is probably the athletic trainer or the strength coach. So no one had visibility, and none of the departments wanted to share full disclosure of data because if I share that with my sports coach might still end up overtraining that athlete. So you've effectively seen how the barriers that organizations create. How do they use analytics effectively?
So really, you can't. Like you just described what the majority of college football looks right now is disconnected silos, data from everywhere. You have your training room, your nutrition staff, your weight room, your player personnel, all operating on different systems. And essentially, from what I've seen, different rosters where you have guys' names spelled incorrectly across the board. I mean, just with that, how are you going to run an analytics or like um, successful analytics with that? It's virtually impossible. So, a lot of teams might think they're doing analytics. The one applied performance scientist might be have this sweet VBA macro in Excel. That's great, but only he sees it. And from an organization standpoint, in the Army, when you change positions, they had what's called a left seat, right seat. Your new guy would come in, he'd sit with you for like 3 weeks, you'd hand everything over to him, all your Excel, all your data, and then he has everything to go. That doesn't happen in college football. So when that sports scientist leaves, he takes all of that Excel, all of that data, not necessarily with him, but it doesn't stay there. It essentially becomes lost. So now, as an organization, you're losing out on years of concrete data, and you're paying for it both in the sports scientists collecting it, the GPS tracking it, the sensors, everything. So once AI is ready to really process all of this data, that's when you're going to see the analytics really take off. So to answer your question of how they're doing analytics, it's a lot of teams think they're doing analytics when they're really not, because in order to effectively do it, you look at the NFL and how they execute their analytics. They have full-time data departments. They have engineers, data scientists that are supporting the whole organization, and they've been there doing that for decades, building on top of each
Well,
other. College football does not have that at all.